everyone. Welcome to Together Church's online experience. I'm Pastor Steve. I'm the lead pastor here at Together Church, and I am so excited you're joining us today for today's message. Listen, if this is your first time watching, listening, being with us here at Together Church, do me a favor, send me a message. Let me know where you're watching from. Let me know how I could pray with you. Let me know what I could celebrate with you. And let me know how we could better connect with you where you are. And if you like to support what we're doing here in Pace, Florida, why don't you do me a favor? You can go to mytogetherchurch.com, and we have a give portal there where you can give to help support what we are doing here. And once again, I'm so excited you're with us today. We've been in the book of Acts for several weeks now. We started on Pentecost Sunday on June 5th, and we've been going through the book of Acts ever since. And we just got out of a series out of Acts chapter 10, a very powerful set of scriptures, a chapter. And I want you to go back and watch those. And now we're going to be in chapter 12, and I'm so excited. In chapter 10, actually leading up to this moment, we have seen the church being persecuted, and God stepped in and saved the very person who was coming against and persecuting the church. And we see peace reigning through from that moment. Now, we've seen a lot of miracles. We've seen a lot of great things happen. We've seen great growth coming to the church during this time, but there was still opposition. There were still people coming against the church. They were spewing their anger and their hate towards the church. And that's where we're at, Acts chapter 12. So if you're following along, Acts chapter 12, verse 1, about that time, Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church. He killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. And this was during the days of unleavened bread. And when he had seized him, he put him in prison, delivering him over to the 4 squads of soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people. So Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayers for him was made to God by the church. Okay, so this is the first time that we see one of the disciples being martyred. Now we've seen Stephen martyred, but this is the first time we see one of the disciples, one of Jesus's closest followers, martyred. It said that they put him to death with a sword, which means they were punishing him. They were putting him to death because he was trying to convert the people. And now Peter is on the same path. And now we could probably look at these scriptures and even ask why. Why would James be put to death, but Peter, as we'll learn soon, spoiler alert, he's saved? Why would God let one die and the other escape? And I want to take you to John chapter 21, verses 18 through 22. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. This he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after this, he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, the one who also had leaned against him during the supper, and said, "Lord, who is it that is going to betray you?" And when Peter saw him, he said to Jesus, "Lord, what about this man?" And Jesus said to him, "If it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? Follow me." Now, this is a very interesting story to me. This is Peter and Jesus after Jesus resurrects and he comes back to earth. He's visiting. He's with the disciples. You know, Peter denied Jesus 3 times, and now you're seeing in this moment leading up to where we just read that Jesus goes to Peter, and for 3 times he says, "Peter, do you love me?" This very intimate, this very I don't know, this very just wonderful moment where Peter and Jesus are talking, and Jesus is offering forgiveness and hope and redemption to Peter. And during this moment, what does Peter do? He looks around, he starts wondering about what's going on with everyone else, right? Jesus is intense with Peter right now, says, listen, I'm forgiving you. And then Peter starts looking around. And go, what about John? What's going to happen to John? Listen, we may never understand why God chooses to do the certain things that he does. Like we don't know why James had to die and Peter didn't. But what we can know, and if you're taking notes, I hope you are, I want you to write this down. We need to keep our eyes on what God has called us to do and what he's doing through us. And this is exactly what he was telling Peter. I want to say it again. We need to keep our eyes on what God has called us to do and focus in on what he is doing through us. If I am focused in on what God has called me to do, I don't have to worry what he's called everyone else to do. If I could keep focused on what God is doing through me, I don't have to lose sight and focus in on what God is doing through other people. So why did he save one and kill the other and have let one die? I don't know. But Peter, in this moment, had to keep his eyes focused. So when you look at your life and go, God, I don't know why you're doing these things in my life, but not these people. Just keep your eyes and say, God, you're in control of everything. And I trust you because I see what you're doing through me. And I see what you're doing to me. And I trust you. And listen, this whole why thing. Never lose faith over a why. There are some things that you don't have to understand. And this is where we humble ourselves and we say, God, I don't understand everything, but I know that you have all things under control. So Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. Peter was in prison, but I am struggling, but I am anxious, but I am broke, but I am sick, but I am dying, but. Listen, this is the testament of the need for community. Peter, I'm sure, was feeling pretty lonely, but he knew he had a faithful God and a praying community. This is the testament of the community. This is our need for community. When I feel like I'm all alone, I have to know that there are a people who is praying for me, who is lifting me up, who I know when I don't have the strength to pray, right? There are people who's praying for me. Peter knew that he was against what he was against. He knew what he was up against, but he also knew who was against what was against him, right? Think about this. He knew what he was facing, but he knew that he had people praying, seeking heaven, fasting, believing against that thing that was coming against him. So he didn't have to fear what was coming against him because he knew what was against that. And when you are going through your toughest battles, who's praying for you? And this is where knowing who you surrounded yourself with is so vital to your faith. Who are the people who are pleading heaven for your cause? Who are the people who is rebuking the enemy who's coming against you? When your back is against the wall, who is helping push you to continue on? Let's look at Acts chapter 12. Let's continue down verse 6. Now when Herod was about to bring him out, that very night Peter was sleeping between two soldiers. bound with two chains, and sentries before the door were guarding his prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in his cell. He struck Peter on his side and woke him, saying, "Get up quickly." And the chains fell off his hands, and the angel said to him, "Dress yourself and put on your sandals." And he did so. And he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." And he went out and followed him. He did not know that what was being done by an angel was real, but thought he was seeing a vision. And when they had passed the first and the second guard, they came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them on its own accord, and they went out and went along one street. And immediately the angel left him. When Peter came to himself, he said, "Now I am sure that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all that the Jewish people were expecting." All right, Peter was alone, probably scared. And now an angel is kicking him. Man, this man can't catch a break. Could you imagine being so far down that even heaven is kicking you while you're down? Come on, somebody. That you feel the lowest you've been, and now heaven's taking shots at you. Come on now. No, this sermon, you probably read it. Kicked by an Angel. What a cool title, right? Can you imagine this moment, laying and getting kicked by an angel? There's three things I want you to remember in these, in this moment. Number one, I hope you're right taking notes. Number one, God sees you. No matter where you are, physically, spiritually, emotionally, literally, God sees where you're at. He knows what you're going through. He knows that you're alone. He knows you're scared. He knows that your faith is being tried. I want you to know your Father sees you. And if God sees you, God hears you. I know there's times where you're crying, you're praying, you're believing, and it feels like your prayers aren't going past the ceiling. It feels like you're in a quiet room praying and no one's listening. No one's talking back. You feel like God ain't listening. But I can guarantee you, God sees you and God hears you. Peter in the deep, dark dungeon, this prison, truly being treated like a criminal. He was tied, cuffed to guards. The door was guarded by groups of soldiers, all because he believed Jesus. And in this moment, God saw him. God heard him. God hears the cries of his people. And if God hears you, God also hears those who are praying for you. Once again, this is why we have to have a community of people who's willing to plead heaven on our behalf. That when we have those days when we feel like our prayers aren't making it past the ceiling, we have to know that God, if God isn't hearing our prayers, he's going to hear the prayers of the army that's with me. Come on, I could have that thought that God doesn't hear my prayers, but I have to know that I have people that God is hearing their prayers. And in these moments, we have to know that God sees us, God hears us, and God hears the army praying for us. And we have to believe that when he sees us, when he hears us, when he hears them, that God will act. That we have to believe that help is on the way. Let's keep reading Acts chapter 12. Verse 12, when he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose other name was Mark. where many were gathered together and were praying. And when he knocked at the door of the gateway, a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer. Recognizing Peter's voice, in her joy, she did not open the gate, but ran in and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. They said to her, "You are out of your mind." But she kept insisting that it was so. And they kept saying, "It is his angel." But Peter continued knocking. When they opened, they saw him and were amazed. But motioning to them with his hands to be silent, he described to them what the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said, "Tell these things to James and to the brothers." Then he departed and went to another place. This is awesome. So in this moment, the church had been praying that Peter would be released from prison. And now the answer to the prayer was at the door. And this is so interesting in itself that Peter knew exactly where to go, that he knew that there was where to run because there were people who were praying with him, praying for him, believing for miracles. He knew the exact place to go because he had the right community. Right. And knowing this, knowing that we have a community that we can run to, that when we know that when everything is going wrong, we know the exact place to go. In this community, we can find three things. Number one, we can find strength. That when I'm weak, there are people who are going to lift me up. There are people who are going to pray with me. Second, there's safety. That when Peter's running, absolutely scared, he's on the run. He's a fugitive from justice. He knew where to go and to find safety. And while he's in that safety, number three, he finds peace. Yeah, everything around him could be chaotic, but when he has surrounded himself with the right people, there's peace. Sometimes all at once. That there's strength, safety, and peace in the right community. And we can't believe the lies that we are all alone in this life. That we can fight knowing that we have created a community around us that's going to fight with me and fight for me. This is very challenging. I want you to really think about this when I say it. Maybe you feel alone at times because you know the quality of the people around you is low. I want to say that again. Maybe you feel alone at times because you know the quality of the people around you is low. That you know the people you surrounded yourself with in life are not lifting you up. They're not encouraging you. They're not pleading heaven on your behalf. They're not fighting with you. They would rather fight you. You know what I mean? And you have got to know that you are surrounding yourself with people who will fight for you. Well, this is very interesting. Now, I find it amusing that they were here praying and pleading heaven for Peter, and there he is, knocking at the door. And they don't even believe it. He's literally knocking at the door. The very answer to their prayer is at the door knocking. All they have to do is believe it and move. And listen, maybe that's you. You are praying, believing, and while you are praying, God is working. That's exactly what happened here. They couldn't check their Instagram to see that Peter was taking a selfie as he was fleeing with the angel, right? They didn't know that was happening. All they knew is that Peter was in prison and they were going to pray, and they prayed. And while they were praying, God was working. I want you to know that's what happens. That while you pray, God is working, but it may take some time for the answer to your prayer to show up on your doorstep. And here Rhoda is so excited that Peter is free. She gets beside herself and she runs and starts telling people, hey, he's here, he's here. And they start to tell her she's crazy. And then they believe that it's an angel. That they are praying that he is freed, but now they believe that he's dead. Listen, sometimes the answer to your prayer is so close that all you have to do is move and believe. That you have to believe that that knock on your door is the very answer to your prayer. And go open it. Because we, a lot of times, will be just like these believers. That God will have the answer to our prayer knocking on a door. And we sit back and go, that can't be it. That can't be the answer to my prayer. That can't be the healing in my body. That can't be the financial blessing that I need. That can't be it. And all we have to do is say, God, that's you. And we get up and we let it in. How many times do you think God has wanted to bless us and we just didn't believe it? Even though we're praying, even though we're crying, even though we're pleading and have all the friends praying for us, even though we're doing all these things, when he finally answers it, we still don't have the faith to believe it. Go to the door. Check it again. And whatever you're facing today, I want you to know that God sees you. God hears you. And God hears that community of people that's praying with you. You say, Pastor Steve, listen, I don't know who's praying for me. Well, who have you asked to pray? Who have you invited into your life to know the deep, dark areas of your life that they could pray with you over? And this is going to sound so mean and so insincere, but the reason you're alone is because you want to be. Now, that's not everyone. Listen, that's not a blanket. Some of us, listen, sometimes we seclude ourselves from everyone. We don't want to open up. We don't want to let people in. And then we get so hurt that no one's checking on us, that no one's there with us. Many times it's because they don't know what you're going through because you haven't told them. You haven't invited people into your life to know what's happening. And if you want to get over that sense of being alone, you got to be vulnerable. That you can't do this by yourself. You are designed to live in community. And there's strength and safety and peace in community. I want to pray with you today. Lord, we love you and we thank you, God. And I thank you for this opportunity to share your word, God. And God, there's people who are watching this who are broken. They're hurting right now, Jesus. And God, I pray that they understand that there are people who is praying. That the answer to their need is close. It could be as close as their doorstep, but they need to believe right now, God, and they need to move to that door and let you in. And God, there are people who are watching who don't know you, who wants to know you, and I pray in this moment, God, as you are knocking on their door, they let you in to be the Lord and Savior of their life. And they can find freedom and hope and safety and peace. God, I love you and I thank you for what you're doing. And I thank you that you are changing hearts and lives in this moment. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, if you are looking for community, if you're close to this area, Pace, Florida, I want to invite you to come visit us in person. If you need community but you don't live close to us, I just ask that you message us and help us to better connect with you, that you could be a part of this community and know that you have people who are praying with you and praying for you. Because I want you to know that life is always better together. We love y'all.